here with the squad. Could I be in better company? I mean, these are the people who are running Trump crazy. Come on, squad, cheer for me.
Exactly right, mates. It's not such a bad place to be. Hey, look at it this week. Democratic debates, the field for 2020. Ed, first thoughts?
Well, nothing much has happened. Maybe we got a little action from Elizabeth Warren, but everyone else seems to be saying Bernie had a lot more energy this time and was coming out swinging as a socialist. So this is the first time he's dropped those words. So I guess the move to the left is really on. Nobody challenged the move to the left. Even centrists were saying there's a lot of good stuff on the left side. So I think to win this nomination, you're going to have to be on the left. And this is where actually Biden has some problems because he's a centrist from the start. So for him to move to the left is going to be very hard.
It seems, as you say, the same faces are getting the most attention. Bernie Sanders, Warren, and still Biden coming out ahead in the second debate. Have there been really any unexpected standouts, or do we see there's those early dark horses like Pete Buttigieg fading into the background a little bit now?
Well, I think they are fading in the background, in part because Trump's extremism makes it very difficult for anyone with a regular agenda to make themselves known and heard. And so Buttigieg and people like that don't have a message that is so staunchly anti-Trump that they can be heard. And if they're too much against Trump, then they have the backlash on that side. So where's the message going to be? Clearly, there has to be something around what's the image of a president? You know, it's got to be important. Is a president going to be able to gather people around him from all over the nation? That's important. Is the president going to be able to restore fundamental human rights? Those are important questions, but they're not exciting, unfortunately. And healthcare, of course.
Yeah, well, this is the one that I'm sort of stuck on looking at these kinds of debates. I mean, you know, Trump obviously overshadows the debate around 2020, overshadows the entire field. But in terms of policy, I don't quite know where they're going to go. The push leftward, I would say, is in some ways encouraging. But as you've said in the past, Democrats can't just be the anti-Trump party, and they can also be painted by their most extreme elements. What are the key policy areas emerging as focus?
Well, as focus, the first is going to be civil rights. And civil rights for everybody. We're talking about gays and not just blacks and Hispanics. The second is immigration. The third will be trade, because that means jobs for people. And the fourth will be medical care. Now, medical care may be way up there in the polls, but it's got to be the fourth issue you tackle after you tackle the others. So I think there's some reality here. Running against Trump is like running against Mercury. As soon as you touch it, it moves. So how do you run against Trump when he has no real policies? He shoots from the hip on everything, things you think might be his sanctimonious policy, like with China. I'm going to tax them, put up barriers, da-da-da-da-da. Where are they? With North Korea, bomb them out of sight. What's happening? North Korea is getting bigger. And with Iran, he's totally in a quandary. His only thing that seems to be consistent on is Saudi Arabia, and that makes everybody mad. So where's this guy going? So if you don't have a target, how do you shoot it?
Talk about those ones a little bit more in just a moment, but still while we're, I guess, on the road to 2020, Russian interference. It seems like Congress, Democrats have been putting up bills, proposals to keep Russia out of the next election, and Moscow Mitch McConnell, keeps knocking them back. The Russian government must be loving this. It's all about. It's the division. It's the uncertainty about legitimacy that they really want to feed.
Well, I don't understand where Mitch is coming from, because most of the Senate are anti-Russia. Look at the bills that came up. Mazinski bill, all these things passed overwhelmingly. So the Senate is not on his side. clearly it's not important to Trump at this juncture to be snuggling up to Putin. So I don't know where he's coming from. But the disaster here is we've lost the National Security Advisor again over this very issue in which I thought the nation was at least in tune together on this one. But it doesn't seem like this one is getting the kind of airtime it needs to pass the legislation that's necessary.
Dan Coates, as you say, resigning because, according to reports, resigning directly because he felt warnings over Russia were not being taken seriously. And I sort of love the thought of Mitch McConnell claiming this is reverse McCarthyism.
What is reverse McCarthyism? I mean, you love your country rather than hate it? I don't get it. What's a reverse McCarthyism? This is some kind of gibberish. Maybe he's senile now. This one is way over my head. Clearly, remember, McCarthy was trying to put out the communist. So how could this be reverse McCarthyism? McCarthy would have been going after the Russians, everything he had. So what's the reverse here?
China. Trump is backing down this week on a US-China trade deal. No deal yet, and next talks are scheduled for September. But Trump has conceded nothing might be done until after 2020. A rare concession, but also possibly a great reason to keep him in the big seat, at least according to him, Ed, because after all, he's a terrific negotiator.
Yeah, he's negotiated so well, he's got nothing done. But people do see him standing up to China. And I think this is really significant. American job picture is looking pretty good. So people don't want more China. They want a little less. And if he stands up to China and things stay the same, that's good for him. So he's not trying to push them back because they might strike, but he's not going to do anything that lets them loose. So on this one, I think Trump is losing his winning. By losing the trade war, he loses at a smaller level than the real trade deficit would be because the Chinese are reacting. They are beginning to buy American foods. They are beginning to buy American goods. And they're doing this because they don't want things to get worse. It's not that they think they're going to turn the clock back. They just want to keep the clock where it is. They have a lot to lose here. The Chinese are becoming an advanced industrial nation, and they know robotics and the like are the future. So they have to be very careful that they run a game that does not actually push them back into the manufacturing era when that's not the future. So I don't think China is going to push too hard on the kind of issues America thinks about, like manufacturing. The Chinese are sending manufacturing to Tibet, to Africa, everywhere else. Middle-class people don't want manufacturing jobs in China any more than we want them in Australia.
Where else are we in terms of trade at the moment? Have we seen any other big developments when there's been so much turmoil with NAFTA, the UK, the EU?
Where we are is I think we're going to have the trading blocks. I talked about this before. I think Trump's next move is to resurrect the thing that he was most against. He and Clinton were against the Trans-Pacific Agreement. I think that's going to be resurrected because the way to win this war is collectively. And this is why the Brits are so crazy at this point, because they won't have a team to join. The European Union is the only team they can join. The United States doesn't really need any British technology, any British financing. So what the United States needs is Britain's access, speaking English. I think some of them speak English, although it's hard to tell. I was there last month. That the British knowledge of European finance and access to Europe is all the United States needs. So in the advanced industrial world, Britain needs to be with Europe and not against it. The United States needs to be with Australia, Japan, and the like, and not against them. You cannot beat the Chinese alone.
Also in the region, North Korea is back to missile tests as a way of shaking their fists at US-South Korea military exercises. Where do things even go from here?
Well, what the North Koreans are doing is making their weapons more sophisticated. This was a short-range weapon, one that can wipe out Japan and Korea, where they can be a bit more precise. So I think we'll find them giving up some testing of long-range ballistic missiles, reducing atomic stockpiles of old weapons and weapon systems the way the Russians did, looking like they're doing something. But the long game here is North and South coming together. And I think that long game has to start coming together pretty soon.
And just while we're international, Kelly Craft, the US has finally introduced a new ambassador to the United Nations. Craft, the former ambassador to Canada and highly recommended by Moscow Mitch. We saw Trump talking in front of the United Nations the other week, and a few people in the crowd having a little bit of a giggle. How is she likely, do you think, to sort of repair relationships with the UN going forward?
I don't think she will repair them, but at least she can keep them where they are. And that's all you can do at this point. There's no repair job here. The United States is still falling behind in its dues, doesn't have the moral high ground anymore. So the U.S. has so much repairing to do. This house is falling down. And the question is, how can you keep enough of the framework so they can do their peacekeeping job?
And on migration, family separations at the border. Despite a court order to stop the separations, more than 900 parents and children, including babies, separated by US border authorities since that order went through. That's not total. This is since they've been ordered to stop, according to reports.
Well, there are two pieces here. One of them is some of those children are not connected to the people they come up with. People are giving their children to grandparents, to friends and relatives. And when there's no proof that this is your child, even here in Australia or in the United States, you take a kid outside the country, you better have proof that it's your child. So I think that is a significant issue. The second part of this is that the United States still has no real policy or programs, either for the region or for the immigration program. I should have mentioned earlier that that's got to be a big part of the Democratic program. The wall, parts of it are going to go up. The president was able to get that through the courts. But it's the parts where they can prove that there's a national emergency. It's not going to be a complete wall. So he has not been jumping up and down saying, I won that one. So where we are now is Trump has made the immigration situation worse. It's getting worse, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. Somebody better come up with something better than what the U.S. has now.
Ed, my pleasure as always. Thanks for joining us again this week.
Well, I hope we have some new issues next week. Maybe a few more candidates for the presidency. I know the ladies standing behind me be more than happy to put their names forward. Or maybe they'll go as a bunch. The squad for president.
The squad for president. Why not? It's a big job. Ed, thanks very much, mate.
Thank you, mate.
Right, bang. Stop that one there. Good goods. What we got there? Yes, the squad. Bloody hell, man. I know, obviously, Kamala Harris not part of the squad, but you can see her facing some of the same issues. But yeah, it was an interesting one at the.
She hasn't made any ground.
Yeah, she's not made any ground. This late one sort of came off strong, but I'm afraid
it's just
not looking like it now.
No. And the problem with her, she's not a vice presidential type.
Mm.
I think the what's her name from Michigan probably has it.
So which one's from Michigan?
The senator from Michigan, she has a funny name, She's a senator from Michigan. Look her up.
Yeah, okay.
And she's a presidential candidate, but I think she's a full presidential candidate. She really wants to be vice president. And I think she has a chance for that because Michigan's a very important state, and it's far enough to the west to give a little bit of a western tinge. So, what's her name? U.S. Senator from Michigan, female.
Michigan. Got it.
Michigan. Senators.
Is this Lavora?
No.
Lavora.
U.S. Senator.
Michigan. Debbie Stadenow.
Who?
Debbie Stadenow.
Stadenour. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's her. Yeah, I think she has a chance for Veep.
Oh, okay. There you go.
The Veep has to be a female, and preferably from the west.
Yeah, that seems to be
So Harris,
my expectation.
Harris is too far to the left. Okay, record modes. Let me see if I got it. Yeah, how do you pronounce it? Stadenour?
Stephen, I'd have to look it up. That's not name. Stadenow.
Yeah, Stadenour. And she tripped up on her when she came out. She said something was stupid. I mean, people do. Warren recovered from that. But Debbie Stadenour. Just let me get this to the right spot. So, sorry I'm keeping you overtime, mate.
Oh, good. No, I'm just going
to... because it is being used in another process. At least it's here.